Thank you, Vice-Chancellor Designate, for that warm welcome and for introducing me. Graduates, ladies and gentlemen, faculty, it's wonderful to have such a fantastic turnout. My theme is also the theme of transition. Today is a day of celebration, a day when the University of Cape Town as an institution celebrates and rejoices in your successes as graduands, in performing a key part of our mandate for government and for the country, in producing for the country highly skilled professionals who will not just fulfill their role in the economy, but will change the society. It's a day of celebration for you and your families after years of hard work and their support, and we thank them for their support. And it's a transition, as you heard, for the university. Graduations, for me, when I look back over the decade, have been the most inspiring moments, the highlights of my decade as Vice-Chancellor, and I've tried to preside in person over as many of them as possible, precisely because they are such a highlight. I have sometimes meet the family members of 3 generations, all of whom take enormous pride in having studied at UCT and assume that their children will continue to come here in the next generation, and see this as not just a place where they came for 3 or 5 years to get a degree, but as something that has shaped their traditions and their families and generations, and their lives are interwoven with that of the university. They continue as alumni, as members of convocation, to play a role, as donors, as supporters. They cannot imagine a life through those generations without UCT. And I know that some of you are from those families and are here tonight, this morning. But even more exciting for me has been being introduced to a graduate's parents who come from a village in Limpopo, who have a few years of schooling, who have never been to Cape Town before, who have, in some cases, never seen the ocean before, and they're here to observe and witness and support their loved son or daughter who is graduating. And not only are they seeing the ocean in Cape Town, but this magnificent university, which almost comes out of the pictures of books that they might have been exposed to. And then they see and clap and ululate as their son or daughter gets capped. And you can see, and I can see, the impact of this higher education, of this university, of higher education in general, in transforming society, in changing the lives of that individual, of the family, of the village they come from, of the community. And I know then, and I rejoice on behalf of the faculty, because this is an experience which is shared by all of us, that our work is rewarded, that we're making a difference, that the institution is changing not just individual lives, but the society. And knowing that is the sort of acme, the highlight of all that we've been doing, the years of preparation, of lectures, of seminars, of tutorials, of preparing our students, of selecting them, supporting them, examining them, and ultimately graduating them. And that is the proof we need for what we do and what keeps us going. So graduations have always been the highlight, and today's graduation will also, you will see, reflect the spectrum of what we contribute to society, because it isn't only the changing of individual lives and the changing of the fortunes of a community, but it's also a contribution to the knowledge of the country and the world. And at today's graduation, you will see a large number of PhD graduates, and I urge you to look through the program where there's a description of what their research has been about as in getting their PhDs. You'll also hear the titles read out as they graduate. And what will become immediately obvious is 3 things. First, that we as a university are contributing at the cutting edge of knowledge globally. that many of these subjects are subjects which contribute to global science and global knowledge, whether in astronomy or in basic science chemistry or in understanding how society works. And that puts us up there with the best in the world. That is what gives us a reputation of being the top university in the continent and one of the great universities of the world. And we must protect that precious asset that we have. The second thing you'll observe is that there are very few topics that are somehow esoteric and not relevant to addressing real problems in our society, real challenges that we face. And that knowledge itself is not just boosting the reputation of the university, but is making a contribution to finding solutions to the problems that we face here in Cape Town, in South Africa, and in the continent. And the third, you'll notice by listening to the names of the people who are called up, is the diversity of our student population, and especially of our doctoral students, who come from many countries in the world, but especially many countries in the continent. Nearly a third will come from other countries in Africa. And that signals the role that UCT plays in the continent as an engine of knowledge production and as the nursery for the future academics of the continent, in positioning ourselves as the hub of an intellectual network and an academic network across the continent. Many of those PhD graduates will be going back to become academics in their own countries, in their own universities, and they will continue to collaborate with us, continue to develop joint research projects, and that is the third key to our positioning of UCT as a global player. This role we play as a hub in bringing together the academics and knowledge producers of the continent, of the rest of the world, and of South Africa. So this graduation ceremony really represents that and captures for me what have been the highlights, many of the highlights of the decade. And then there's another area in which this graduation ceremony, when I reflect back on this decade that I've been in office, signals change, and that is what it says about transformation. The transformation, in one sense, is obvious through the graduates themselves and the demography of the graduates. But the ceremony has changed. While we still follow the traditions, such as wearing academic gowns and capping graduates and conferring honorary degrees, the UCT ceremony now is also transformed to reflect and to be more inclusive, to reflect a variety of cultures and heritages. The music, the African music that we heard as we walked in, the Mbongi, who you will hear shortly, the isiXhosa praise singer opening the proceedings. Many of our students choosing to and encouraged to wear cultural and traditional dress with their graduation gowns. Families taking full advantage of traditional ways of singing praise, ululating, dancing in the rows as the graduates' names are called. So transformation has many dimensions. One of those is the symbolism of our events and of the university. And in that respect, we have also undertaken significant debate and discussion around the symbols more widely of the university. With the removal of the Rhodes statue in 2015, the revisiting of the curation of artworks in the university, the renaming of buildings and places and streets, the attempts to change the culture of the institution and the commitment to make it a more inclusive culture, the multilingual language policy, and many other aspects of transformation. There is also a long way to go. And when thinking about a decade, it's appropriate to reflect both on successes and failures. And while there have been many successes, an area where we have not made sufficient progress has been in the numbers of senior black academics at the professorial and associate professorial level. Growing our own timber still is a challenge. So we are making inroads. They are fragile, but there is progress. For example, in the last year, more than 2/3 of all new academic staff appointed were black South Africans. And so we can see the change happening, but for that to reach the highest levels will still take some years. We have also run many projects in communities and fulfilled our role as a university that reaches out and is responsive to the social changes and challenges around us. These are some of the highlights, but as I say, there have also been challenges. And in thinking about the message for graduates and the transition that you are making as you graduate today, it is worth reflecting I was thinking, what is the leadership lesson that I would pass on to you based on my experience of the 10 years leading this institution? And it is that along with the successes come failures and challenges. There have been highs and lows. And the message or the quote that I have fallen back on when I have faced particular challenges is one from Winston Churchill, which I want to pass on to you. Many of you, the MBA graduates, are going to, I expect, become leaders in your field, leaders in businesses and in communities, and will face both successes and failures, challenges and stresses. And this quote from Winston Churchill might also be useful for you. He said, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." And that is the leadership message I would like to leave with you. And then one final message. As you graduate from UCT, we know and have confidence that the quality of your degree, what you've learned, your technical competence is superb. The university's reputation establishes that. But we hope that as a graduate of UCT, you also leave with a value system and that you will implement that. The business world in the last decade, since the financial crisis in 2008, has actually suffered a serious dent to its reputation in terms of integrity and ethics. Whether you're in banking or in auditing or in consulting, many of the people we've looked up to for decades as providing the leadership in the business world and in the commercial industrial world have been found wanting in the areas of integrity, honesty, and ethical practice. The challenge to you as you go out is to make sure that you remedy that reputation, that you practice ethically, but also that you make a difference not just to your own lives, no doubt you will, in a material sense and in your success as individual leaders, but to the society around you, recognizing that you are enormously privileged to have had a tertiary education, to have had a postgraduate education, to have had an education at the University of Cape Town, puts you in a very small, tiny elite in the country of people who have had those benefits and privileges. And with that comes a responsibility to make a difference to society, to address the issues of inequality and injustice, and to use the knowledge, the competence, the positions you have to make those changes. So returning to the theme of transition and thinking about your futures, there are risks involved, there will be failures involved, you will achieve nothing if you do not take those chances and take those risks. And I close with a quote from Mark Twain, which I think is especially appropriate for a graduation. He said, 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things that you did not do than by the ones you did. So throw off the bow lines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, and discover. I wish you well for your futures. Congratulations.